Hi, and welcome back to David Pattinson's Accused Friends. And I want to say a big thank you to everyone who came out to Trafalgar Square yesterday for the big anti-lockdown protest. I think it's the biggest one I've seen. Probably dating myself a little bit, but I remember the heady days of, I think it was April or early May, when there were the first London anti-lockdown protests. And it was really just, 100 to 200 people. Piers Corbyn, it was when he was kind of getting arrested for speaking at Speaker's Corner. Happened to him a couple of times there. And Piers Corbyn, he was pretty much the only person in the country protesting at the time, of a certain esteem. Certainly no one in Parliament was. And then this led to the big Black Lives Matter protests. And the difference was that if you're an anti-lockdown protester, you were accused of spreading the virus. And if you were a Black Lives Matter protester, you were not. And the big difference we learned was that the key to succeeding in not spreading the virus as a Black Lives Matter protester was just bringing thousands and thousands and thousands of people. And that was what was happening in London in the month of June and July. I'm pretty sure there was a lot of Black Lives Matter protesters. And I think that's what's given the anti-lockdown protesters a lot of confidence, that if they just show up in massive number, there's no chance of them spreading the virus. And that's what happened yesterday. And I was there in the early afternoon, sort of a packed house. There was some really fiery speakers. There were police around, but there wasn't really any trouble at the time I was there, or I read in the news later on that there was. There was hardly any face masks. It was great. It was like being in a free country again. There was a real freedom mood, and it gave me a lot of confidence because, I've been speaking out against lockdown since day one, since before it was called lockdown. I've been advocating for a prosecution of the government for totally violating our civil liberties. And it's so encouraging that so many more people are waking up to this and coming on board with this and saying enough's enough. And even the political classes are now trying to claim credit for saying this is violating our civil liberties. Groups like the Brexit Party standing up against the violations of our civil liberties. Of course, they were deafeningly silent back in the summer when it was just the early protests. I don't know where Nigel Farage was, but I think if you check the boating logs for the English Channel, you might find reference to him. Steve Baker, who's coming out saying this is all this lockdown too is a violation of our civil liberties, was deathly silent back in the spring. And, him and the Conservative Party, who I believe are majority in Parliament, waved all these violations of civil liberties through. People like the respected Graham Brady, although respected by whom, I don't know, are now trying to say, Parliament needs a vote. They having waived their right to, debate and vote on the restrictions on British freedoms back in March. So I think they're a bunch of total hypocrites. I hope more people call them out, but they are being drowned out by the groundswell of support among the British people against the lockdown restrictions. There was also an interesting interview I saw with Anna Breeze online with this German doctor, Heiko Schöning, who's a sort of a doctor, and who was saying there's no epidemiological basis for all the lockdowns. And he said that in his esteemed opinion, the whole lockdown process was a cover for the financial reset and for the controlled explosion of the current financial system due to all the massive debt. And it's an opinion I agree with. I later saw that he was being arrested for speaking at Speaker's Corner. That's kind of what happens nowadays. We don't allow freedom of speech anymore. I don't know if this guy was arrested for telling the truth. Maybe he was, but I do think it's pretty outrageous. If we're a country that follows the science, if this guy's a scientist, why aren't we following him? Why are we arresting him instead? So I hope anyone who's not aware of this story looks it up, tries to find out what's going on with Dr. Heiko Schöning. Seemed like a really nice guy. I don't know what he's done. He's probably just told it like it is. That's obviously a criminal offence in Britain these days. I want to also ask the question of Black Lives Matter. I think we need to give them a lot of thanks for really opening up the floodgates of protest in the country. You probably remember last year when there was all the Remain protesters, seems like a long time ago now, and all the media was saying how these people had a right to protest and it was the British tradition, all this sort of stuff. But of course, when people want to protest against the lockdown, that tradition, that right is no longer extended to them. They're described as selfish people. And that's what Sadiq Khan was tweeting about yesterday, he having cheered along all the Black Lives Matter protests. So the question I have is where are the Black Lives Matter anti-lockdowners? And an acronym I would use for them is BLMAAL, which stands for Black Lives Matter Advocates Against Lockdown. I think if that group got out there, they'd be able to really speak out against lockdown, speak out in favour of Black Lives Matter. And you remember after the BLM protests, the Premier League picked it up. They had the minute silence, they had the kneel down, they had the Black Lives Matter on the shirts, on the sleeves. It was called the Black Lives Matter Premier League. Will that happen now for the lockdown, anti-lockdown? Will it be anti-lockdown on the back of Premier League shirts? Will it be anti-lockdown on the sleeves? Will there be kneeling for anti-lockdowners? I noticed there were no police kneeling down yesterday for anti-lockdowners, but they did have a lot of face masks on. A couple of miscellaneous notes I want to add in this video. When I left the protest, I was trying to get to a bar to get a drink, and every bar I went into, they said, "Where's your face mask? You can't come in without a face mask." So, obviously I'm not going to patronize these places with, my money. I'm probably nearing some sort of record in Britain for, being ejected for the most amount of bars, for not doing the track and trace, for not wearing a face mask, for just simply wanting to sit quietly and have a beer. People probably say, "Hey, David, it's probably best you keep out the way," and maybe it is, but I grew up in a free country. I was taught at school that we are a free people. I feel that's a tradition I need to try and extend for our country, and obviously it's proving very difficult at the moment, but I do encourage you to push back. This was different to the last time I was in London, which was only really a few weeks ago. Getting very, very strict on all the face mask stuff, so stay out of there for the time being. Also, I did a video a few days ago about predicting the differences between lockdown 2 and lockdown 1, and obviously with this big groundswell of support, I mean, it's possible we can head off lockdown 2. I guess the big vote is on Wednesday in Parliament. A couple of updates since that time. There's been the extension of the furlough by Rishi, which I predicted would happen. Pretty much exactly as that I would happen, that it's going to be extended, but it's going to be for less. He was talking about zombie jobs and all this sort of stuff. Something I missed out in that video was the NHS clapathon. Obviously, if the NHS was saving all these lives back in March, April, and everyone's clapping every Thursday. Second wave, theoretically, the NHS is going to be saving just as many lives this time, but yet will the clapathons return? I'm going to predict no. I think it's been made pretty clear that the NHS workers are doing less work this year than they were last year, and that's because they've pretty much eradicated the hospitals of anyone with any other illnesses. There were those stories of children being turned away from London hospitals. If you've got cancer, you can forget about getting a hospital appointment. And it's the state of affairs. So maybe you want to go and clap the NHS for those changes to their policy. It used to be that if you paid your tax, you'd get NHS treatment, as Tony Blair used to say, free at the point of use, despite the fact that all the medical personnel were being paid by someone. Also, if you didn't pay taxes, you'd still get NHS treatment. That's obviously all over now. You only get NHS treatment if you are a sort of a disciple and supporter of government tyranny, and also if you have the coronavirus as well. I think they'll probably see you then. So I think that's pretty much it for this video. Again, a big thank you to everyone that showed up to this protest. It's pretty easy for me to get into London where I live and where I work, but for a lot of people they have to travel long distance, and they did it en masse, and it was really encouraging to see. We really need to keep the pressure up, get these hypocritical members of parliament to start to change their policy, to pretend that they were never in favour of the lockdown in the first place, and that they're definitely not in favour of lockdown 2. So let's keep up the great work. Thank you to everyone again. Please subscribe to the channel, and I want to keep these videos going now. And thank you all again for all your support of me, and let's stay together here, keep moving the ball forward. So thanks very much.